He thought he had the final move. The world watched as President Trump boasted of a flawless strike on Iran's nuclear sites. Surgical, decisive, historic. Behind him, flags flashing bulbs, and the calm confidence of a man convinced no one would question what came next. But someone did. Not with anger, not with accusations. She didn't raise her voice. She raised something else, a USB, and in one breathless moment, she pressed play. 4 minutes later, the room that planned war sat frozen. 4 walls, 1 voice, and a truth they weren't ready for. This story is told through dramatization, names, stakes, and emotions inspired by our very real political climate. The characters may speak fiction, but the silence they break echoes real fear, real power, and real consequences. Because while the bombs may be metaphorical, the abuse of power isn't. And sometimes the only thing more dangerous than a president who plays with fire is a woman who records everything. The Chiron on Fox News screamed in bold capital letters. Mission accomplished. Trump crushes Iranian threat. Martial music surged through every screen. The kind you don't just hear. You feel it in your chest. Anchors beamed. Commentators nodded with synchronized conviction. Outside the White House gates, a small but fervent crowd had gathered, chanting, USA, USA, between camera flashes and cardboard signs reading, Peace through power. And then he walked out. President Donald J. Trump emerged onto the South Lawn, flanked by 2 Marines and 1 teleprompter, his signature red tie catching the late afternoon sun like a warning flare. His hair, just slightly disheveled by wind, added an accidental drama to the already choreographed triumph. He didn't smile at first. He stood silent. Let the cameras blink. Let the world lean in. Then, we stopped a future war. Cheers erupted. Even the reporters, most of whom had rolled their eyes through 100 of his past pressers, went quiet. Not from agreement, but from the chilling realization. This time he meant every word. Behind him an American flag billowed. Not flapping, billowing. The image would be replayed endlessly, cropped into campaign ads, memes, and YouTube thumbnails. A president, a flag, a war, now allegedly avoided. A moment of manufactured legend. But something was off. Not in the speech. The script was tight, choreographed, polished in every syllable. Not even in the crowd. They were loud, emotional, perfectly placed for primetime optics. The tension wasn't in what was seen. It was in what was missing. There was no mention of civilian casualties. No questions taken. No generals by his side. No map. No evidence. No independent verification. Only one man with a microphone, declaring victory over a country that hadn't confirmed it was even at war. And yet, he called it flawless. The words hung in the air like smoke that doesn't rise. 3 hardened nuclear facilities. Gone, he declared. No casualties. No risks, only results. He didn't blink when he said it. Didn't flinch. But someone watching from inside the Capitol did. Up on the Hill in a darkened congressional office, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez didn't clap. She didn't even move. She just replayed the sentence in her mind. We stopped a future war. A sentence that sounded noble, patriotic, clean. But she knew better. Knew what was left unsaid, and worse, what was untrue. Because 3 days ago, a source she didn't name had slid an envelope across her desk. Inside, a red USB stick. Its contents? Unknown to the public. Unverified. Untouched. Except by her. It didn't look dangerous. No seal. No code. Just a scuff mark on the plastic and a folded note attached. Play it only if he celebrates. Now as Trump stood beneath a flag large enough to drown facts, she felt the words of that note burn at the edge of her resolve. She turned down the volume on her office TV. She didn't need to hear it again. She needed to remember how it felt, because the country had just witnessed a declaration. But they hadn't heard the tape. Not yet. And when they did, if they ever did, the word flawless might never mean the same again. The room was cold. Not the kind of cold that came from vents or faulty thermostats, but the kind that settled in when power entered and truth exited. It was room 312-B, the secured basement chamber where House intelligence briefings happened without phones, without press, without time to lie. The kind of room where history waited its turn, silently. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez sat third seat from the end. Her blazer was navy, crisp, her hair pulled back just tight enough to signal clarity, not control. She hadn't spoken in 36 minutes. She hadn't needed to. Sometimes silence carries more voltage than noise. In front of her lay nothing but a legal pad, blank, and a plain red USB drive. No labels, no markings, just one tiny dent at the corner, like it had been dropped in a rush. Her fingers hovered over it like it might bite or explode. Across the table, a staffer leaned in, barely a whisper. Now? AOC didn't even blink, just a slow, precise shake of the head. Not yet. On the far wall, a muted screen showed footage from the White House lawn. Trump's mouth moved, his hand sliced the air. The volume was off, but everyone in the room knew the script. Flawless victory. No casualties. World saved. The words may as well have been tattooed into the table by now. But AOC's eyes weren't on the screen. They were on the USB, because she'd already heard what was on it. 3 days ago, late at night, no staffers, no witnesses, just a set of headphones and the kind of audio file that doesn't scream. It coils. A man's voice, confident, laughing. If we strike now, we bury the story by Friday. Polls go up by Monday. That's how you win elections. She had listened twice, then again, then turned off the lights and stared into nothing for 20 straight minutes. Not because she didn't believe it, but because she did. And belief, in politics, is a dangerous thing. Back in room 312-B, the briefing had moved on to satellite images. A general gestured to explosions marked with red circles. Complete destruction, he said. Minimal resistance. But no one talked about names. No one said the word child. No one asked what happens next. AOC did not interrupt. She simply closed her pen, placed both hands over the USB, and exhaled. Slow and full, like someone steadying the ground beneath an avalanche. Because timing was everything. She knew that. You don't drop truth like a bomb. You guide it in, inch by inch, until it detonates on its own. In their conscience, not just their newsfeed. 37 minutes now. The staffer looked again. Congresswoman? AOC whispered back, not with hesitation, but with absolute certainty. Let him finish celebrating. Because when she pressed play, it wouldn't be a debate. It would be a reckoning. It didn't happen in a war room. It wasn't in a secure vault or under the glow of classified projectors. It took place in a utility corridor behind the Rayburn building, the kind of place where truth prefers to hide. AOC was walking alone, no aides, no press. Just her coat, her phone turned off, and a restless hum inside her that she couldn't name. That's when she saw him. Not uniformed, not important by title, but his posture gave it away, the way people stand when they know too much. He didn't say his name, didn't need to, just handed her a small red USB drive and a sealed envelope. It's raw audio, he said. You'll know when to listen. She opened the envelope that night. No headers, no timestamps, just the sound of a room, muffled breathing, the scrape of a chair, and then, unmistakably, the voice of the President of the United States, Trump. No, I don't need another briefing. I need a win. There was silence. Then someone tried to speak. Probably an analyst, maybe a general. But Trump cut him off. We hit their bunkers. We dropped the GBU-57s. You know what happens? Tehran scrambles, oil prices spike, and Americans thank me. Nobody remembers the nuance. They remember who looked strong on screen. Another voice, cautious, uncertain. Sir, intel shows civilian zones nearby. Then make the map smaller, Trump snapped. They don't need to see what's inconvenient. The room fell into a hush. Not out of agreement, out of calculation. Everyone in that recording was choosing survival over integrity, except the one who hit record. AOC paused the file, let the stillness settle, then played it again, slower. It wasn't rage she felt. It wasn't shock. It was the terrifying realization that this wasn't the exception. This was now the strategy. She didn't pace. She didn't call anyone. She simply sat on the floor, cross-legged, back against her bookshelf, and stared at the blinking cursor of an unsent email to the House Ethics Committee. She deleted it. This wasn't about procedure. This was about timing. And timing, in Washington, is a form of warfare. The next morning, she walked into her office, placed the USB inside the back panel of her desk, and told her staffer two things. No one touches it, and when he declares victory, remind me. That day came faster than anyone expected. Now, as chants of USA echoed on every screen and pundits called Trump's strike historic, AOC sat silent, watching the clock tick past the 38th minute. She hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, because she understood something they didn't. Truth doesn't scream, it waits. And when it's time, it plays itself. The recording didn't begin with a bang. It started with laughter. The kind that fills a room when power gets too comfortable. The rustle of papers, the tap of leather shoes, then the unmistakable clink of ice in a glass. Scotch, maybe, or arrogance. A voice cleared its throat. Someone from the Joint Chiefs, calm, professional. Sir, we've reviewed the latest assessments. Our analysts agree. Escalation carries significant risks. Iranian civilian casualties could reach. Trump cut in like a guillotine. His voice cracked the air, impatient, sharp. This isn't about nukes. This is about November. There was silence, not respectful silence. Stunned, paralyzed silence. The kind that only grows in rooms where rank outweighs conscience. He continued, pacing the room as though that would generate strategy. We've tried border drama, immigration fear, economy fluff. None of it sticks. But you drop one well-placed bomb, you get primetime dominance for 3 days minimum. Voters love strength, especially scared ones. Another voice tried to interject. Mr. President, foreign policy isn't a campaign tool. Not. Trump banged the desk. Everything's a campaign tool. You think Reagan won by being nice to Moscow? You want headlines? I'll write them myself. Commander-in-Chief strikes evil at its core. Someone coughed. Then a general, his name redacted in the briefing, but recognizable by the gravel in his voice, spoke low. You're gambling with lives. Trump chuckled. I'm trading them. For votes. And by the way, they're not ours. A slow breath could be heard. Papers shifted again. Then the same gravel-voiced general spoke once more. Then this is where I step off, sir. I won't be part of this. The sound of a chair pushed back. A folder slapped shut. Footsteps, deliberate, weighted, toward the door. You walk out, Trump warned. You're off every defense committee for the rest of your life. I'll take the silent, the general replied. At least it's honest. And then the recording paused. The staffer who had delivered the file had included no context, no legal memo, no briefing summary. Just this raw, unfiltered revelation of policy turned into strategy, of national defense weaponized for personal pole bumps. In that moment, the Oval Office became less a seat of power and more a soundproof box for unchecked ego. Back in her office, AOC stared at her reflection on the black screen once the clip ended. She whispered not to herself, but to the hollow stillness that followed every truth. They didn't bomb Iran. They bombed accountability. She rewound the file again, not because she needed to hear it, but because she needed to remember how it felt. The betrayal, the calculation, the sheer casualness with which lives, foreign and domestic, had become nothing more than campaign chess pieces. This wasn't just about Trump. It was about the system that let him get this far without anyone pressing stop. But she would, when the time was right. And when she did, it wouldn't be a partisan blow. It would be a reminder that power without witness is how empires rot from the inside out. The first signal didn't come through a press conference or a headline. It came through a private Proton Mail inbox at CNN. Subject line, your briefings missed something. The body of the email was just one sentence long. He overrode every recommendation, and we have the minutes to prove it. At first, no one in the newsroom wanted to believe it. The strike had been too clean, too perfectly timed, too dressed up in patriotic flair. But that's what made the email linger. Truth, after all, rarely shows up covered in confetti. Senior producer Dana Kessler didn't run to air. She ran to sources: the National Security Council, two former State Department advisors, a contact at CENTCOM who had suddenly gone dark after the night of the strike. What she got back wasn't confirmation, it was silence. And that kind of silence in D.C. is louder than any denial. Within 24 hours, another message came, this time with an attachment, a redacted memo, time-stamped 48 hours before the bombing. It was titled Joint Security Objection, Premature Escalation Risk. 6 names on it, 1 crossed out, the rest blacked out. The summary read, Recommendation, delay authorization pending Allied intel. Immediate action may destabilize the region and compromise U.S. diplomatic leverage. Below that, 1 handwritten comment in thick Sharpie, overruled, execute. Dana leaned back in her chair. A chill ran through her spine, not from what the memo said, but from what it implied. The president had been warned. He had been cautioned, and he had chosen spectacle anyway. By that evening, the phrase made its way into a CNN broadcast. Subtle at first, tucked inside a panel discussion with an ex-intel officer. Was this strike truly based on threat analysis, or was it political? The room went quiet for a beat too long. Then another voice chimed in. The precision, the timing, the media rollout, it felt rehearsed, like it was written for a campaign trail, not a battlefield. Twitter picked it up in minutes. Hashtags bloomed. Hashtag strike or stunt. Hashtag politics over peace. Hashtag flawless for whom. And somewhere in a quiet corner of the Capitol, AOC watched the clip replay on loop. She didn't smile. She didn't call press. She simply underlined 1 sentence in her notepad. They're starting to sniff smoke, but they haven't seen the fire. Her staffer entered, breathless. CNN's getting bold. AOC nodded, eyes still on the screen. Let them be curious. It'll hurt more when they realize how long they missed it. Because this wasn't just about a leak. It was about a question being planted into the bloodstream of public opinion. A question that once asked cannot be unasked. What if the president bombed Iran to boost his polling average? For now, it was a whisper, but she knew what was coming. Truth doesn't whisper for long. The cursor blinked at the bottom of the page. Steady, patient, almost like it was daring her to finish. AOC sat in the muted glow of her desk lamp, elbows on wood worn down by 1,000 quiet storms. She had written 6 paragraphs. Not a single word was soft. She called it what it was. A deliberate abuse of executive authority under the guise of national security. She named the victims, not by body count, but by silence. Unnamed, unburied, and unmentioned. She quoted the memo CNN had hinted at but never shown. She demanded an inquiry. She demanded the truth, and yet she hadn't hit send. She read it again, slowly, not for clarity, for impact. Would it resonate? Would it survive spin? Or would it drown in the rising tide of denial already forming in every Sunday talk show and partisan thread? Her staffer had suggested releasing it immediately. Strike while the networks are still confused, he said. Control the narrative. But AOC wasn't chasing a headline. She was preparing a reckoning. She looked up at the Capitol dome through her office window. It was lit, as always, glowing not from purpose but from tradition. An old monument trying to look awake. She whispered to herself, letters are quiet. Her fingers traced the edge of the red USB beside her keyboard. That scuffed, unmarked thing carried more voltage than any paragraph she'd ever written, because letters might persuade. But recordings linger. They don't argue. They echo. Outside her window, cameras were already staging for morning hits, reporters sharpening questions that only circled the truth, never pierced it. Did the president overstep? Was the intelligence flawed? Is Congress overreacting? No one was asking the real question. What if this was all intentional? AOC knew if she sent the letter now, it would land like every other protest, folded, debated, defanged. But the USB didn't ask for commentary. It dared you to respond. She closed the document, didn't delete it, just saved it in a folder titled, If They Lie First. Then she turned off the screen. For now, the doubt could spread. Let them wonder. Let the pundits speculate. The senators tweet. The headlines guess. Truth didn't need to be first. It just needed to be undeniable. It was supposed to be about numbers. Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. sharp, the House Intelligence Committee was scheduled to review projected cyber defense spending. Another dry, half-empty hearing destined for C-SPAN obscurity. Staffers arrived with coffee, spreadsheets, and low expectations. No cameras, no chaos, just the quiet hum of government pretending to function. Until one line of text appeared in the committee's secure agenda system at 8:41 a.m. Emergency clause invoked. Member requested session. Classified. No explanation, no file attachment, no time to ask. When Chairwoman Malinowski walked in, her eyes went straight to the source. AOC. Calm. Alone. Already seated. A single red USB resting on the folder in front of her, like a sealed confession waiting to be read aloud. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, the chairwoman said evenly, you've filed for an emergency clause. What's the basis? AOC looked up, her voice low but precise. Imminent concern regarding executive misconduct in military engagement. The room shifted. A ripple passed. Half curiosity, half dread. The kind of shift that doesn't just change a meeting, it changes the air. Malinowski hesitated. And your evidence? AOC tapped the USB once. Just once. First-hand audio from the West Wing. You'll hear it. And when you do, I suspect this room won't feel so neutral anymore. That's when the doors closed. Steel, magnetic locks. Phones dropped into lead-lined drawers. Aides were dismissed. The live log paused. Room 112-B transformed, not into a place of debate, but into a vault of secrets about to be cracked open. 3 members rolled their eyes. One whispered, stunt. But 2 others, veterans of intelligence briefings and covert hearings, leaned forward. They recognized something in her tone. She wasn't here to posture. She was here to detonate. Before I proceed, AOC continued, I'm invoking procedural shielding. No member here is legally permitted to discuss what they are about to hear outside this chamber without full committee declassification. Malinowski nodded. Acknowledged. Proceed. AOC reached forward and inserted the USB into the committee's secure terminal. No slides, no bullet points. Just a single file named Northroom raw.wav. And as her finger hovered above the play key, she added one sentence. Not for drama, but for memory. Every war has a spark. Today I'd like you to meet it. She pressed play. The click was small, almost soft, but in a room wired for silence, it echoed like a fuse catching fire. The red USB sat inside the secure port, its tiny indicator light blinking once. Then steady. No one spoke. Not the chairman, not the aides, not even the members who had scoffed just minutes before. Everyone leaned in. Not physically, but mentally. That particular kind of tension when people realize something irreversible is about to happen. AOC didn't raise her voice. She didn't stand. She didn't gesture. She simply said one word as if issuing a sentence that couldn't be appealed. Listen. And then she pressed play. At first, nothing. A soft hum. The sound of someone shifting in a chair. The subtle buzz of fluorescent lights. Then, the voice. No, I don't want another assessment. I want airtime. It was unmistakable. No need for authentication. No deepfake expert required. Every person in that room had heard it 100 times before. From podiums, from rally stages, from the Twitter feed that governed international chaos. It was the president. This isn't about intelligence. This is about image. Someone at the far end of the table dropped their pen. Another scribbled a note with a hand that had started to tremble. We're not losing the election because of policy. We're losing because I look weak. Bomb something hard enough and they'll forget why they were mad in the first place. A cough. Then the voice of a general. Hesitant, careful. Sir, this could destabilize. Then let it destabilize. Let them talk. I'll take the heat, because the heat's good. It distracts. The words landed like glass cracking in slow motion. Each syllable fractured the illusion of leadership. tore through layers of patriotic theater, and laid bare something colder than ambition: calculation without conscience. If this leaks, another aide began. If it leaks, we blame faulty intel. Standard playbook. Hell, we might even gain points for decisiveness. By now, the file was only 2 minutes in, but the room had aged 10 years. Binders were shut. Eyes darted sideways. One member, a Republican from Texas, stared down at his knuckles like they might split open. The mask of party loyalty was slipping, inch by inch. AOC didn't watch them. She didn't gloat. She didn't even blink. She watched the screen, not because she needed to hear it, but because they did. Every second, every breath, every echo of moral failure that had been hidden beneath flag pins and sound bites. Then the final words came. History doesn't remember hesitation. It remembers impact. Click. End of file. She pulled out the USB slowly, like someone removing the key from a locked door they knew would never close again. Silence followed. Not from awkwardness, from realization. A line had been crossed, not with missiles, but with motive. AOC looked up, meeting the eyes of everyone in the room, not in accusation, but in invitation. To remember this moment, to choose what to do next, because after truth lands, no one gets to claim ignorance, only complicity. The line came 3 minutes in. No one cares about Iranian kids. What they care about is swing states. It wasn't yelled, it wasn't snarled. It was said with the dry, casual tone of a man explaining weather patterns. Predictable, impersonal, and devastatingly clear. The room froze. One congressman, Mitchell, Michigan, Purple District, let out a single word under his breath. Jesus. Then he stood, left his notes, and walked out. No excuse, no explanation. Just the scrape of his chair against the tile and the quiet click of the door behind him. Another, a freshman Republican from North Carolina, pulled out his phone. Technically, he wasn't supposed to have it. No one was. But he turned it on anyway and hit record. Maybe for proof, maybe for insurance. Maybe because part of him already knew this moment would not stay inside four walls forever. I've done the math, Trump's voice continued. 6 missiles, 3 headlines, 1 point bump in Ohio. No one spoke. Not even the ranking member, who just 20 minutes earlier had called AOC's request grandstanding. He now stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched, his hand trembling slightly above a forgotten coffee cup. AOC didn't react, not outwardly. Inside, she felt the weight she'd carried alone for 2 weeks begin to shift. Not lifted, but redistributed. Now it pressed down on every person in that room. The voice on the recording shifted tone. Harder now, like strategy had become instinct. Dead kids don't vote, but parents in Florida do. You want to win? Give them a villain with a foreign accent and a countdown clock. Someone gasped. Audible, undeniable. It wasn't politics anymore. It was pathology. And still, the file played on. We're not in the business of saving lives. We're in the business of saving the office. That's when the screen finally went black. The playback stopped. The air felt thicker, like the oxygen had been laced with something corrosive. No one moved. The silence wasn't awkward. It was radioactive. Chairwoman Malinowski looked down, then looked up, slowly, like someone surfacing from deep water and unsure what world they'd return to. I need 5 minutes, she said, voice hoarse. She wasn't alone. One by one, lawmakers rose, unsure where to go, but certain they couldn't stay. Even those who remained didn't speak. They scribbled notes they wouldn't read, glanced at each other like strangers on the edge of a shared secret too large to name. AOC stayed seated. She didn't gloat. She didn't lecture. She didn't say, I told you so. She only whispered more to herself than anyone else. Echoes don't need volume, just silence to bounce off. Because now they'd all heard it. The only question left was, what would they do with the sound? At 2:17 a.m. EST, when most of America was chasing REM dreams, the clip dropped. 19 seconds of raw, unfiltered audio echoing from an anonymous Twitter account. No preamble, no context, just a whisper. We keep the cameras rolling. If anyone finds out, game over. That's all. 19 words, 17 beats, one volcanic fissure opening in the digital ground. Instantly, Twitter erupted. Hashtag Sound of Power trended within minutes. Retweets flashed faster than emergency alerts. View counts spiked. Millions in the first hour. The snippet lit up screens across the globe. Scrolling feeds froze. Midnight snacks were forgotten. Sleep became secondary to decoding what was being whispered and what they were hiding. Morning arrived. Newsrooms seized the moment. CNN cut to breaking news. Whisper heard around the world. What just leaked? MSNBC ran a special live. Did Twitter crack open Washington? Even Fox had to cover it. Qualified, cautious, but compelled. Nobody could ignore the digital wildfire growing from a seemingly innocuous leak. But why 19 seconds? Why from an anonymous handle? Digital detectives disassembled the clip with forensic precision. Mic hiss, room tone, faint echo of a distant door. Patterns matched those from the hearing room. Anonymous audio experts announced, that's not a deepfake. That's live and loud in its implications. AOC's campaign team sprang into subtle motion. Instead of urgent statements, she let the moment breathe. On social, she posted, "Truth travels dark corridors, but it still finds daylight. No hashtags, no capital letters. Just a stone that rippled." The clip staked new claims, that the leak came from inside the hearing chamber, that someone, unaware of live mics, had spilled a confession, that when power talks quietly, the world must listen loudly. Across Reddit, threads titled "Proof the Truth Always Finds Ways Out" surged. Civics classes paused their slideshows. College professors announced pop-up seminars titled "Ethics in the Age of the Mic." By midday, sound tech YouTubers uploaded slow-mo audio breakdowns. Each syllable, breath, and hesitation replayed and replayed. The whisper became iconic. Everyone needed to know each nuance. Others posted transcripts, translations, etiquette analyses of how not to speak when microphones never sleep. In Washington, aides scrambled. Internal leaks rushed. Press secretaries typed firings-ready statements. Every senator on both sides suddenly had urgent travel. Simulated oversight appeared everywhere. The halls of Congress felt both claustrophobic and exposed. No one blinked until midday sunlight forced them. And AOC? She didn't chase the noise. She controlled it. While pundits screamed unverified and anonymous source, she shared an article on civil vigilance. No commentary. Then a concise note. Silence didn't save them. Exposure did. Her restraint felt surgical, dramatic, and the public responded like thunder. Meanwhile, the hashtag Sound of Power hashtag became a classroom chant. High school debate moderators played the clip, real-time lessons on accountability, consequences, and ethics. Students argued, if you can't hear the consequences, are you really listening? Universities live-stream panels. Cameras everywhere, but not a drop of accountability. The torrent of views turned into civic education, one whisper at a time. Even tech giants joined in. YouTube's trending page lit up. TikTokers slowed the sound to 0.5 times speed, publishing duets analyzing tone. Veteran groups responded, if they can't admit it to the mic, why expect honesty elsewhere? Open letters unfolded from legal scholars. Power should fear the mic, but truth should fear nothing. This leak shows how crucial whispers can become roars. And just when doubt threatened to overshadow the moment, the whisper repeated itself in a hearing clip we'd never heard before. Under the din of shouting lawmakers, that same voice surfaced, tentative, terrified, unmistakable. The room understood. Viewers clicked replay again. By evening, newspaper front pages screamed, 19 seconds that changed everything. Anonymous whisper reveals House in crisis. Cable hosts spent hours replaying each phrase. Disagreement didn't erase belief. People accepted that truth's echo doesn't fade if captured. Back in her office, AOC issued a final line on her site. The mic didn't catch everything, but it caught what mattered. Short, shocking, immortalized. The chaos was still radiating from Capitol Hill when Fox News hit gas pedal. In reverse. Breaking into programming, the Chiron glared. Is the audio real? Fox Tech finds AI signature. They didn't whisper. They roared it. Experts were called in, frames slowed down, waveforms dissected. Fox anchors leaned into the camera. Deepfake alert. A voice cloned. This is a manipulation, political theater. Immediately, the counter-narrative was launched. Graphics flashed. AI logos, digital code imagery, simulations of artificially generated wave patterns. Every skeptic got airtime. In the infographics-laced studio, Fox framing was simple. They want you to believe it's real, but check the data. Veterans, data analysts, tech pundits, all were brought on set to share doubt. Doubt that could neutralize the clip. Doubt that could protect their narrative. Inside her office, AOC didn't respond to media subpoenas. She ignored the email chains, skipped every interview offer. Instead, she logged on to a basic social post. Truth doesn't need graphics. It has voice, no capitalization, no hashtag, just an undeniable magnet of words. That night, Fox doubled down. A panel questioned every piece of evidence. The audio is inconsistent with known speech patterns. The timestamp metadata shows last month's use of editing software. Could be anyone with a voice print. Tentative voices rang through Sunday reruns. But those who heard the original clip knew how familiar it sounded. They knew the cadence, the tone, the conviction. Meanwhile, cable rivals seized the moment. MSNBC aired side-by-side comparisons, deepfake versus real citations. Sound experts explained the science. Every syllable, every mic nuance was replayed slower and slower. CNN held an off-the-record roundtable. Reality check, I can mimic voices. But the content here, strategy, timing, context, no AI could produce that without internal data. That's not a glitch. That's a confession. Even conservative apps were rife with reposting, explaining the difference between waveforms and policy consequences. So much for a closed echo chamber. Fox's viewers reacted. One longtime commentator posted, "I trust audio professionally. Can't be AI if it lines up with the timeline and internal documents." A neighbor called into the Hate the Tape livestream. "Maybe this caller said it was AI, but I heard the same echoes in that briefing room live." In the swirl of doubt, AOC refused to fade. Instead, she shared a short message to her official site, a transcript unredacted of the full clip. No context, no edits. Then the statement, "Facts don't need filters. The honest mic outlasts the loudest graphics." She didn't demand belief. She offered clarity, and the public surged in response. That same night, TikTok creators dissected the audio. One clip slowed it to half speed, showing consistent pauses, breaths, and tonal inflection. Veterans chimed in. That was how officers sound in classified settings. Flat, clipped, direct. AI specialists posted side-by-side files. The final rendering failed. Pulse readings in the tape matched human patterns. Breaths broke at the wrong places. No algorithm could fake that authenticity. One voice raised calmly on camera. AI can replicate sound, but it cannot replicate consequence. Only humans bear that. It circulated like wildfire. Fox pushed back, still unverified. But disclaimers slipped into background disclaimers. Graphics continued. Anchors hedged. And the audience? Divided at first, but slowly shifting. Because in arenas of transparency, doubt can stall, but rarely wins. AOC's refusal to escalate rhetoric became her rhetorical bullet. She didn't amplify the conspiracy. She refused it. Truth doesn't need graphics. It has voice. Her four-word post splintered the noise, carried conviction, understood by millions. Online, people debated, some on policy, some on philosophy. If AI was real, legends would exist of perfect phonetics, but none had context. None had this kind of agenda. High school teachers printed her post on red bulletin boards. A blogger countered, "Graphics cloud our sight." A voice once heard stays in our heads. Podcasts that once dismissively labeled AOC now replayed the full transcript, pausing, letting it land slowly. As the weekend turned, new watchers found the hearings on replay sites, They didn't crowdsource conspiracy theories. Instead, they wrote comments like, "Even if it was AI, the meaning behind it is real." That's what scares them. Veterans in Ohio posted family discussions. "My daughter said AI made it fake. My father said the meaning's what counts." They argued in our living room. In Congress, lawmakers confronted cables with increasing alarm. Even some hardliners quietly requested forensic reports. Others demanded full release of all committee recordings. The room was changing its tune from denial to digging. AOC herself reappeared briefly. "You can generate graphics. You can animate waveforms. But truth lives in context and in consequence." That sentence, unhurried, hit feed again. Fox's AI narrative lost momentum after that weekend. New polls showed 63% believed one thing: the voice was likely real and intent undeniable, which is why, by Monday, subcommittee chairs released fresh subpoenas. We need the original master recording. We need cross-technical reports. We need answers without filters. Without shouting a word, AOC shaped the conversation. Her silence wasn't absence. Her calm wasn't appeasement. It was discipline. And discipline cut through the noise like a sharp knife through deceptive shadows. The doubt had crept in that morning, a fog of rebuttals, denials, technicalities. Fox News anchors insisted it was AI. Analysts wondered if the tape even existed. Conservatives called it a rumor weapon. But by mid-afternoon, one message shattered the fog. A retired general stepped before a podium at a secure hearing room, surrounded by aging uniform pins and quiet cameras. He had served alongside those in the secret session 2 weeks ago, and he had never spoken, until now. He took a deep breath and said, in a low, graveled voice, "That's his voice. I was in that room." Every camera clicked. Every anchor sat up. Share buttons on phones lit up like fireworks. In that instant, silence gave way to a new kind of noise, the clamor of confirmation. It wasn't a flashy press announcement, no dramatic staging, just a man in a crisp blue blazer, worn hands folded over a file, looking straight into the lens. "I tracked that recording from the moment it left the table," he continued. "Donald J. Trump, speaking without hesitation. Not hypothetical, not speculation." Viewers leaned in. The claim carried weight. He wasn't a partisan. He was a soldier, a man who obeyed orders, not headlines. That dropped the mic all over again, this time with cannon-round impact. In D.C., pundits scrambled. MSNBC cut to breaking news graphics. Former general verifies authenticity of tape. Fox News countered with, "Still officially unverified," but the undertone betrayed them. Nobody was buying uncertainty anymore. On X, hashtag sword, hashtag Jen confirms, hashtag proof at last, hashtag Mic drop moment. Reddit threads exploded. Twitter threads spun into mini civics lessons. Even children in classrooms now had the quote to repeat, "I was in that room." A thunderclap of truth echoed across digital walls worldwide. AOC didn't tweet. She didn't respond immediately. She watched from the steps of the Hart Senate office building, phone in hand, expression steady. Because when the evidence lands like that, the former general confirming, the tape validated, the only move is to let it speak for itself. And speak it did. Newsletters published instant analysis. History shows officers don't come forward for theatrics. A general's credibility outweighs 10 press releases. Law professors lectured in live streams. Because he was there, we no longer debate whether the words exist. We debate what to do next. Meanwhile, grassroots activists mobilized. In Ohio, a retired school teacher led a town hall discussion. "Let's talk military ethics, our right to question war makers, and the education system that never taught us how to challenge authority." In Texas, a veterans group held a press conference. "We trust our uniforms. We trusted him. If he verifies, then the people must act." Across every network, punditry gave way to pause. Only dry facts remained. Tape confirmed by former general. AI defense crumbling. Emergency hearing already scheduled. Stakes more than political, they're constitutional. The morale of the swing state pundits cracked. One host muttered on live mic, "If a man with a flag pinned to his chest says it's real, You can't brush that off. That nuclear trigger phrase, the validation, spread faster than the tape ever had. AOC's response, hours later, was posted directly to her website. When a soldier speaks truth, the nation owes him silence enough to listen and action enough to respond. No rally, no gavel, just a sentence that carried the weight of the hearing room and the battlefield alike, and it went viral within minutes. Opinion polls shifted in real time. One CNN commission survey showed 58% of respondents saying proof broke the argument of deniers. Soon after, that rose above 65%. Delegate-level Republicans quietly began endorsing renewed oversight. Just to restore trust, they said. Even a few erstwhile detractors found new respect. A proud conservative caller explained on live radio, "I didn't like her politics, none of us did, but I do respect this general. If he confirms it, I'm paying attention." By evening, newsrooms talked of the turning point. Sidebars filled, verification triumphs, the general who changed the narrative. When silence fails, a uniform speaks. And in living rooms across America, families replayed the clip side by side with the general's confirmation. Parents paused it, teens asked questions, teachers used it as a civics test. What changes when evidence isn't disputed? In the quiet aftermath, AOC gave an unscripted moment. Standing outside the hearing room, she told a reporter, "They gave us 4 minutes, a whisper, and a soldier's confirmation." Democracy never needed louder words. It needed honest ones. That sentence spread by text, chat, DM, and retweet. Democracy doesn't need noise, many repeated. It needs honesty. The world saw an operative quietly dismantle a political shield, not with power play, but with proof after 72 hours of media frenzy, international pressure, and internal whistleblowers threatening to go public. Capitol Hill has scheduled what's being called the most urgent hearing since Watergate. The hearing's title, Special Session on Allegations of Federal Knowledge Suppression and Election Manipulation. Translation? The tape changed everything. It wasn't supposed to reach this point. The morning the audio leaked, senior Republicans huddled behind closed doors while Democrats avoided cameras, waiting for the fallout. But the fallout didn't wait. In New York, protests erupted before dawn. In Georgia, voters began showing up to congressional offices holding signs. "We heard it. Now do something." By noon, even independent senators were tweeting, "If this is real, we're complicit unless we investigate." And yet Trump stood firm. At a Mar-a-Lago press event, he smirked into a sea of flashes. "Fake tape. Fake news. Real power. That's all I'll say." But America didn't stop listening. And that silence, it was louder than any rally chant. Congressional staffers leaked that internal polls showed a 27-point trust drop in 2 days. One GOP senator reportedly told aides, "If we stonewall, we're toast. If we hold a hearing, we're on fire." They chose fire, because fire, at least, looks like action. The moment the hearing was announced, hashtags exploded. Hashtag the Mick never lied. Hashtag special session. Now, hashtag truth on trial. AOC's camp issued no formal comment, just a single post. The truth wasn't leaked. It was released. No filter, no hashtags, just facts. Media outlets scrambled. MSNBC cut regular programming with the headline, "Congress yields emergency session called over leaked audio." CNN aired a live town hall. Was it a blunder or a blueprint? Fox News, they tried. Kyron's read, "Trump calls tape fake. Others call it foundational." The wordplay couldn't save them, because no one could explain away what was already echoing through every earbud in America. And still, Trump doubled down. He reposted a meme mocking the tape, then added, "Don't let a glitch in the Matrix fool you. I wrote the Matrix, it backfired." Because this wasn't a meme war anymore. It was institutional accountability, on trial, live. Political strategists warned, this is no longer about Trump. It's about every person who stayed quiet while knowing. Commentators noted that the emergency session wasn't just bipartisan, it was panicked. Meanwhile, AOC's office confirmed she would testify, but refused to share what she planned to say. An aide anonymously leaked one line. "She doesn't need to raise her voice. She's bringing the volume with her. And here's the kicker. School curriculums paused to address it. Colleges emailed students, tomorrow's lecture will include a breakdown of the congressional response. One professor posted, we are witnessing a living civics lesson. Teach it right. Because what's on trial now isn't just a voice on a recording. It's integrity, memory, consequence. What do we do with truth when it comes late, but still loud? They were shouting over each other. Again. Voices collided across the congressional chamber like thunder without a storm. Loud, directionless, desperate. Accusations flew, defenses crumbled. One man yelled fraud, another barked irrelevant. Chairs squeaked, papers slapped the table. It was a circus wearing a suit, and amid the cacophony, AOC sat still, unmoved, almost bored. But the folder in front of her? That was loaded. She waited, not for silence, but for exhaustion. Then she pressed play. No preamble, no grandstanding, just a click. And suddenly the room went still. A familiar voice came through the speakers. Male, confident, cold. They won't notice. Just say it's procedural. It always works. Then another. But the funding's misaligned. First voice again. Doesn't matter. We'll spin it. 4 minutes. That's all it took to gut a year's worth of denial, to collapse the scaffolding of every soundbite that had tried to paint her as hysterical, misguided, overreaching. A 4-minute clip, undeniable, unspinnable, unforgivable. And she didn't say a word while it played. When it ended, you could hear a throat clear in the back. One congressman looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Another tapped furiously on his phone, eyes darting, searching for an escape. But AOC didn't move. She looked up once the clip ended and simply said, he knew, and he didn't care. No inflection, no fire, just fact. What happened next wasn't theater, it was revelation. Social media detonated. Clips of the hearing cut just before and after her pressing play racked up millions in minutes. Tweets thundered, she didn't shout, she detonated. 4 minutes, 4 hours of shouting. She had the receipts. They had rehearsed outrage. CNN paused their live election countdown to cut to the hearing. MSNBC ran an instant special. Fox? They hesitated, then broke into scheduled programming with the chyron. AOCDR, OPSAUD, IOB, OMB, INCOMMITTEE. Even they couldn't spin this, not fast enough, because the public had already heard it. He knew, and he didn't care. In classrooms across the country, teachers rewrote lesson plans. In cafes, strangers debated ethics. On TikTok, a teacher posted, today's civics lesson, how truth doesn't need volume, it just needs courage. And here's the twist. The louder they had shouted before, the smaller they looked now. AOC's silence turned their noise into self-parody. They tried to drown her out, and all they did was amplify her when she needed only 4 minutes and 1 sentence. This wasn't just about policy anymore. It wasn't left versus right. It was character versus cover-up, and one side had just lost the benefit of the doubt. In Detroit, a mother of 3 posted, I tell my daughter to speak when she's ready, not when they want her to. AOC just showed her why. A war veteran tweeted, we fought for accountability. She just delivered it with 1 button. Late that night, AOC was asked if she'd give a follow-up statement. She declined. She didn't need to, because sometimes the loudest move is the quietest one. They thought the hearing's explosive reveal would be the climax. They were wrong. The true bomb dropped just as cameras began to power down, capturing not AOC's words but their whispers, and the earth shook. As reporters descended into murmurs and flashes of lens, one man, his lapel mic still lev, leaned in conspiratorially. If this gets out, this could sink us all. He didn't shout. He didn't realize the mic was still hot. But what he said rang loud enough to crack ceilings. Across the country, viewers froze mid-scroll. On couches, eyes widened. In offices, screens replayed that breathless moment. The phrase looped instantly. If this gets out, was it a threat or an admission of guilt? Either way, the damage was done. No one had to shout. AOC, She didn't raise her voice. She didn't take the mic. She watched, calm, resolute, as the truth fell out in echoes she never intended to speak. Because the most powerful revelations don't require a megaphone. They just need silence to bounce a whisper into a roar. A flood followed. Video clips slowed the whisper to slow-motion dread. GIFs animated his lip, captioned, "I should have turned the mic off." Hashtags detonated. Hashtag Mick was still hot. Hashtag moment of truth. Hashtag she didn't even speak. By the time midday arrived, the whisper was trending more than the clip itself. Cable networks pivoted into emergency mode. MSNBC paused documentaries mid-roll. CNN cut to anchor desks. Fox News tried to spin. He was talking optics, one anchor claimed. It wasn't about facts. But try explaining this could sink us when America already heard we knew it. The room at the Capitol, frozen, staffers muttered. Lawmakers backpedaled in slow motion. One Republican member slammed his fist, mouth open, but silent because everyone had heard. Because now, the public wasn't debating the tape. They were digesting the whisper and what it meant. Over on TikTok, high schoolers watched the moment as part of their civics lesson. "Bro, he literally says he's scared of the truth," one captioned. Another teen looped the audio under the question, "If silence was harder than this, what would matter more to you?" In living rooms and nursing homes, people paused mid-bite and asked spouses, "Did you hear that?" Many swore they could feel the guilt radiating. Meanwhile, AOC didn't need to tweet. She didn't need a camera. Her silence was a spotlight. A final quote? She later said simply, "The mic was hot. So was the truth." She never made it about drama. She made it about accountability. More reactions flooded in. A union organizer typed, "They speak when they think we're not listening." "We are listening." A veteran posted, "I gave a decade for my country. I didn't sign up for lies wrapped in power." And a civics teacher in Detroit printed the line on the board, "If this gets out, now ask yourself, to whom?" Even some who once supported silence now flipped. Fox's own tech team quietly admitted the feed never lost audio. Behind-the-scenes tweets slipped. "We dropped the ball." It wasn't a glitch. It was an admission. In local cafes, whispered talk turned into loud talk. Did you ever believe politics would sink itself? But more importantly, are we awake now? Because exposure, once triggered, doesn't rewind. Critics claim the digital mob was overreacting. But the truth isn't a mob, it's the consequence. Lawmakers started requesting new subpoenas. The Ethics Committee reopened with renewed vigor. They said the clip alone was already grave. But the whisper, it became proof. Ignition for reform. On Reddit, one user posted, "He wasn't plotting in shadows. He was planning in full broadcast." That phrase now carries the burden of every lie we let slip. And the thread exploded. AOC emerged from the hearing room like someone walking out of darkness, eyes clear. No one filmed her. No one chased her. Because everyone knew the mic was still hot, and she didn't have to say another word. Ohio wasn't supposed to shift, neither was Texas. But by Wednesday morning, something cracked. It wasn't in the headlines. It was in the diner booths, the VFW halls, the Facebook groups run by men who rarely posted anything except photos of old badges and pickup trucks. They weren't angry. They were insulted. "I buried friends for less than this," one Vietnam vet wrote in a public post from Columbus. "If this had happened in '69, someone would have faced court-martial." Another from Amarillo commented, and suddenly those posts had 20,000 likes, from people with usernames like Marine Mom and Desert Storm Dad. Fox News tried to hold the line, but the callers were different now. "I was Republican my whole life," one man called in live. "But that mic didn't lie. We heard it. He knew. He didn't care. And now you're telling me it's fine?" The anchor blinked, cut to commercial. But the internet didn't. Meanwhile in Kentucky, AOC landed unannounced. No press blitz, no entourage. Just a town hall and a high school gym, folding chairs, old bleachers, and a sign outside still announcing last week's PTA meeting. It was supposed to be 40 people. Instead, they opened up the second wing, then the cafeteria. By noon, 1,100 people had shown up, many in camo jackets, denim, and faded army hats. They didn't clap at first, just watched. AOC didn't start with the tape. She started with a name. Sergeant Daniel Morales, U.S. Army, died of complications from burn pits. His file was delayed. You know what the memo said? Too political to process at this time? That's your tax dollars. That's your son. There was no applause, just silence. The kind that crushes all the air out of a room and makes people shift in their seats not out of discomfort, but because they feel something heavier than heat, memory. Then she said the line, "If this country can ask you to bleed for a flag, it damn well better not lie under it." And the bleachers exploded, not like a rally, like a courtroom with a verdict, like a church with a confession, like a nation realizing its silence wasn't neutral. It was part of the noise. Back in D.C., reporters swarmed the Capitol to get veteran reactions. One man in a Navy cap just said, "You don't get to dodge a draft, dodge a fact, and still call yourself commander-in-chief." The quote went viral in 22 minutes. At the end of the Kentucky town hall, AOC stood alone on the gym floor. A young boy, was maybe 12, walked up to her. He didn't ask for a selfie. He gave her his grandfather's medal, taped to a note that read, "He told me truth is worth more than rank." And for once, the cameras didn't chase her out. They followed her, silent. Because that day, in a place that never trended, truth wasn't something said. It was something earned. It was supposed to be a normal Thursday segment. Stocks, storms, a half smile teased toward the weekend. Then Dana Renshaw looked directly into the camera and blinked like she'd just seen the sun rise after years of blackout curtains. "Before we go to commercial, I need to say something." The control room scrambled. Producers leaned forward. Her co-anchor froze mid-shuffle of cue cards, but she kept going. Dana Renshaw had been at Fox News for 23 years. She'd covered 4 elections, 2 impeachments, a war, and more weather disasters than she could count. Viewers trusted her because she rarely flinched, even when the world did, until now. We've played clips, we've spun narratives, but I won't defend that tape. Not this time. Not when I know what I heard. On social media, people thought it was a prank. Is this scripted? She's trolling Fox. But those who knew her, veterans, teachers, former interns, saw something else. The pause of a woman who'd been complicit too long. Her resignation wasn't a press release. It wasn't a tweet. It was 5 words that detonated across America's living rooms at 7:58 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Some truths don't need permission. And then she removed her earpiece. On air, live. The fallout was nuclear. By 8:12 p.m., #DanaWalked was trending worldwide. Clips of her statement went viral across platforms typically allergic to Fox content. By 8:37, MSNBC aired the moment in full. No commentary, just silence. And at 9:04 p.m., Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez posted a single line, "Truth doesn't need defenders, just a mic that stays on." It got 1.2 million likes in under an hour. Back at Fox headquarters, panic broke out. Producers frantically combed past broadcasts for moments that might resurface. Anchors rehearsed new disclaimers. Legal teams were summoned. But it was too late. Because Dana hadn't just walked off a set. She had cracked the ceiling. And the air rushing in smelled a lot like accountability. By midnight, other journalists began speaking out. A former editor from the network tweeted, "I was told to cut segments where veterans questioned military funding." Dana wasn't dramatic. She was just done. A second anchor at a sister station posted, "I wish I had her courage. I've stayed quiet too long." And then came the unexpected. A former Marine, once featured in a pro-Trump campaign, publicly wrote, "I didn't lose brothers to watch truth become optional." Renshaw told the truth. That shouldn't be heroic. It should be normal. On Reddit, someone unearthed Dana's very first Fox broadcast. She was younger, nervous, but she said something eerily prophetic. "The job isn't to make the powerful comfortable, it's to make the public aware." Now that quote is on t-shirts, posters, protest signs. High school students are printing it for civics class. Fox News issued a 2-sentence statement the next morning. Dana Renshaw has chosen to depart from her role. We thank her for her years of service. But the silence that followed was louder. Because when trust is broken live, no PR firm can stitch it back together. At the end of that night, Dana wasn't trending anymore, but her words were. And in a time when microphones lie, graphics deceive, and noise drowns nuance, one voice stepping away rang clearer than anything shouting could ever achieve. She didn't slam the door. She opened a window and let the country breathe truth for the first time in years. It started with a whisper online. A single Reddit thread titled, "Does this violate the Logan Act?" gained 24,000 upvotes in under 2 hours. By noon, a change.org petition had 300,000 signatures. By sunset, 3 million. By midnight, 10,002,467. The language wasn't partisan. It wasn't angry. It was chillingly clear. We the people demand a full investigation into the use of office for unauthorized foreign negotiations, obstruction of justice, and betrayal of public trust. The Logan Act, an obscure 1799 statute, suddenly became front-page news. Legal experts went live on cable. Constitutional lawyers did explainers on TikTok. Retired federal prosecutors re-emerged from retirement for one reason. The American public was demanding accountability, not from the streets, but from their screens. On Capitol Hill, aides panicked. "Who leaked that clause?" one congressman whispered. "It was public record," another muttered. "They just read it." AOC said nothing for 36 hours. Then she stepped onto the Capitol steps, faced a crowd of 200 reporters, and said just this: "This isn't about me. It's about what we normalize." She held up a single sheet of paper, the Constitution's oath of office, and walked back inside. Fox News ran a segment titled "Mob Rule Disguised as Patriotism." But it backfired. Veterans called in, teachers emailed, even small-town sheriffs, some wearing red hats just weeks ago, posted videos holding up pocket constitutions, repeating her line, "It's about what we normalize." The pressure didn't come from protests this time. It came from PTA meetings, from Sunday sermons, from union halls and gun clubs and public libraries. A librarian in Wisconsin put up a new display, "Democracy from Jefferson to Now." A pastor in Alabama rewrote his sermon. When Scripture says to speak truth to power, it didn't mean only when it's easy. And a 7th grade civics class in Montana live-streamed their school board meeting to read the Logan Act aloud. At 10 million signatures, the White House released a vague statement. "We respect the public's engagement and the democratic process." But behind the scenes, DOJ officials were already examining call logs, calendar entries, and flagged communications. One investigator reportedly muttered, "It's not the act itself that's criminal. It's how casually they committed it." In a South Carolina diner, 2 older men watched AOC's clip on a dusty TV. One shook his head. "I don't like her politics." The other replied, "I don't either. But damn if she didn't say what needed saying." And that was the power of the moment. Not that AOC raised hell, but that she refused to raise her profile. She let the public rise instead. Meanwhile, the petition became more than a count. It became a movement. People signed, then posted a photo of the one person they were signing for. A parent who served, a child in school, a neighbor deported, a town forgotten. One woman posted, "I'm signing for my dad. He fought for this flag, not for someone to use it as cover." At CNN headquarters, a producer reportedly whispered, "We haven't seen public civic engagement like this since Watergate." The difference? This time it wasn't sparked by reporters. It was sparked by a mic that never turned off, and a congresswoman who never needed to shout. The climax wasn't rage, it was reckoning. Not the kind with riots or chants, but with receipts, oaths, and clarity. It was the quiet revolution of a people who remembered that silence isn't neutral. It's consent. And on that day, 10 million Americans chose to speak. With signatures, with truth, with no more looking away. It didn't begin in Washington this time. It began in room 214 of a public high school in Toledo, Ohio. Mr. Chandler, a civics teacher nearing retirement, dimmed the lights and pressed play. The clip rolled. A hot mic, a whispered confession. This could sink us. Gasps followed. Desks creaked. Eyes widened. And for a full minute after it ended, no one said a word. Finally, a girl in the back asked, "Is that real?" Mr. Chandler nodded. "As real as anything I've ever taught you." Another student whispered, "Why didn't I hear about this sooner?" He turned to the class and asked, "What does real patriotism sound like?" That night, students went home not with worksheets, but a question. Where do we draw the line between loyalty and silence? Parents reported teens asking about the Constitution, the Logan Act, and ethics clauses. One mother posted on Facebook, "My son just asked me if loving your country means you have to confront it sometimes. I didn't know what to say." The next day, an impromptu writing assignment was given. Title, "What does real patriotism sound like?" Some wrote about truth, some wrote about betrayal. One student wrote, "Patriotism isn't a flag. It's the courage to question who's waving it." Another, "They told us to stand for the anthem, but they never taught us how to stand for the truth." Mr. Chandler compiled the essays into a PDF and sent them to his local paper. 3 days later, the Washington Post reprinted one in full. It went viral, not because it was inflammatory, but because it was precise. A 16-year-old wrote, "If we teach our kids to pledge allegiance, we should also teach them to recognize when that allegiance is being manipulated." Fox News tried to downplay the classroom moment, calling it indoctrination, but they made the mistake of playing the full essay live. The anchor couldn't finish reading it. His voice cracked. In Colorado, another teacher downloaded the clip, then another in Georgia, then hundreds. Within 2 weeks, over 1,200 high school civics classes had replayed the tape. Some students cried. Some demanded school-wide discussions. One PTA president in Arizona proposed a patriotism and integrity town forum. It drew standing room only. An 8th-grade boy stood up and asked, "If adults can lie in Congress, what are we supposed to believe?" Even veterans noticed. A retired Marine posted a TikTok reacting to the classroom essays. His caption read, "I didn't lose brothers in Fallujah so someone could whisper their way out of accountability." His video got 4.6 million views, and then AOC shared it. In a brief comment, she wrote, "I didn't run for office to go viral, but if that tape plays in classrooms more than it did in Congress, maybe we're finally having the right conversation." She declined interviews, but she sent hand-signed notes to 3 of the students whose essays had gone viral. One read, "You reminded me that the truth doesn't need an audience. It just needs enough of us to refuse to forget it." By mid-month, the Department of Education was flooded with requests. Add the Logan Act to high school civics. Require ethics units in all government curriculum. And one line echoed through the emails. "We played the tape." Now what? Outside room 214, someone had taped up a student's essay on the door, underlined twice in red. The tape was never just a scandal. It was a syllabus, and class just began. For 3 weeks, he said nothing. No press conference, no tweet, no Truth Social post. The nation waited, breath held. But the silence screamed. Then, on a Monday morning heavy with thunder and headlines, the former president stepped before a flag-draped podium in Florida and declared, "This is treason." The room froze. He pointed to the viral tape, to the 10 million signature petition, to the resignations and hearings now looming. "This is a witch hunt. AOC and her socialist army are trying to destroy America from the inside." But this time, something shifted. The old applause, muted. The roar of his loyalists, eclipsed. Because on every screen around the country, a CNN flash poll appeared just minutes later. Do you believe the airstrike was politically motivated? 62% answered, yes. Even right-leaning independents had turned. A caller on a conservative talk radio show asked plainly, "If it wasn't about politics, why did the orders change right after that meeting?" The host stammered, then changed the subject. But America wasn't changing the channel. That night, AOC didn't issue a counterstatement. She didn't need to. Instead, a tweet resurfaced. From 4 years ago, it read, "If we ever get to the point where silence becomes safer than the truth, democracy won't die in chaos. It'll die in consensus." People shared it by the millions. Meanwhile, the GOP scrambled. 2 senators called for a reframing of the facts. One called the strike technically unprovable. Another suggested a national healing moment, but no one could explain why classified footage showed what it showed, or why that mic was never supposed to be on. Fox News aired a 5-minute segment titled The So-Called Scandal, Real or Hyped. It ended with the anchor sighing, "We still don't know what we're supposed to believe," and that's when it hit the public. If even their defenders were this unsure, maybe the truth was no longer on their side. Back in Queens, AOC walked past a mural. It hadn't been there the week before. A student had painted her silhouette, holding not a microphone, but a mirror. Across it were the words, "The truth didn't shout, it echoed." She didn't stop to pose, didn't repost, didn't even slow down. Meanwhile, rallies erupted in Phoenix, in Madison, in Pittsburgh. Not loud, not angry, just lines of citizens, holding up earbuds, listening, a silent protest, but a deafening message. Late that week, Trump posted again. In all caps, "We're coming back stronger. Stay tuned." But the replies said more than the post. Too late. We listened, and we won't forget. In an unprecedented move, a group of military families sent an open letter to Congress. It ended with one line, "We buried our sons with honor." Don't bury this truth with shame. And yet, amid the chaos, AOC refused to center herself. "No victory dance," she told a reporter. "This isn't about me winning. It's about the system losing its ability to lie without consequence." The tape kept playing, in classrooms, on TikTok, in coffee shops and boardrooms. But it wasn't just the content anymore. It was the aftermath. The fact that one voice, accidentally amplified, had unraveled decades of deflection. And so, while he shouted treason into microphones that used to obey him, she simply walked into another hearing room, with nothing but a pen. Because the truth had already spoken. The briefing room was unusually still. No shouting reporters, no flashbulbs, just rows of chairs, filled but silent. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stepped to the podium. No teleprompter, no aide beside her, only a small folded piece of paper in her hand. She looked up. The lights didn't blink, but the weight of the moment dimmed everything. "The bomb dropped," she began, voice calm, deliberate. But it wasn't the loudest sound that day. A pause. The loudest sound was the silence that followed. The silence of complicity, the silence of cover-ups, the silence of power pretending it didn't hear the truth. She didn't flinch. She didn't perform. She let the weight sit. Behind her, no flags waved, just a plain white wall and the shadow of a nation still catching its breath. Reporters scribbled, but some stopped, just listened. "This was never about just one strike," she continued. "It was about the fact that for decades we told ourselves this is how it works, that war is complex, that decisions made in whispers shouldn't be questioned by those who live with the consequences. But a microphone forgot to turn off, and suddenly the room remembered what honesty sounds like. One reporter dared ask, 'Do you think this ends your career?' AOC smiled, softly, not smugly. 'That's the wrong question. The real one is, if we ignore this moment, what kind of careers are we protecting?' In Mississippi, a mother held her son's military photo to the screen. In Oregon, a veteran left a comment, 'I served 3 tours, and I never heard anyone speak like that until now.' In a Detroit high school, a civics teacher printed her quote and taped it to the blackboard. Underneath, students wrote anonymous answers to the question, 'What silence in your life needs breaking?' The hashtag final quote trended globally in 4 hours. Not because it was catchy, but because it didn't try to be. It was honest and raw, and people were starving for both. That evening, a producer at Fox News privately messaged a rival at MSNBC. "Whatever this is, it's bigger than party." The reply, "Yeah, it's bigger than us." Meanwhile, the Pentagon quietly announced a review panel, and several lawmakers who once scoffed at AOC's presence now released cautious statements about needing oversight and restoring public trust. The floor was shifting, but she wasn't celebrating. Instead, she walked into a community center in the Bronx that night. No press, no photo op, just chairs and kids. One asked shyly, Did you mean to say that line? She laughed. I didn't mean to be quoted. I just meant to be honest. The next day, newspapers printed her words on the front page, not buried beneath headlines, front and bold. Some truths don't need permission. A day later, she tweeted just one sentence. History doesn't echo what was loud. It echoes what was right. Fade to black. And then, white text centered on screen. This is a work of political fiction, but the questions are real. Inspired by the power of truth and the silence that follows when it finally lands. A final image, a microphone, unplugged but not forgotten, and a line beneath it. The mic dropped. America listened. When the nation held its breath, and so did I. Reading this moment, I couldn't help but remember a time I stood in front of a crowd, unsure if truth would matter. The stakes were smaller, but the fear just as loud. AOC didn't storm the chamber. She didn't shout. She brought a 4-minute truth and let the silence echo. That's what real strength looks like. And the lesson? Sometimes the most powerful voice is the one that simply refuses to flinch. We often wait for someone else to speak first. But what if your courage is the one the room is waiting for? So I ask you, if your voice held the power to shift a nation, would you use it or would you wait? Let's talk. Let's share. Let's not scroll past the moments that define us. When the nation held its breath, and so did I. Reading this moment, I couldn't help but remember a time I stood in front of a crowd, unsure if truth would matter. The stakes were smaller, but the fear just as loud. AOC didn't storm the chamber. She didn't shout. She brought a 4-minute truth and let the silence echo. That's what real strength looks like. And the lesson? Sometimes the most powerful voice is the one that simply refuses to flinch. We often wait for someone else to speak first. But what if your courage is the one the room is waiting for? So I ask you, if your voice held the power to shift a nation, would you use it or would you wait? Let's talk. Let's share. Let's not scroll past the moments that define us.